Joining me here right at the top of the show is Ric Peri. Ric is AEA's Director of Legislative Affairs and Government Relations. And Ric, thank you very much for being our opening guest here on a Friday afternoon.
Thank you.
There's kind of a lot going on in Washington, but a lot of it's happening really behind the scenes. Some of that has to do with the rewrite of Part 123. There are some things going on in the certification arena that I know will have a big effect on this industry. From your perspective, what are the big issues that are going on right now?
Well, I think the Part 23 rewrite you're talking about is very much an evolutionary change. We're kind of excited about it. It's actually 20 years in the making, so it's actually a real interesting activity. Reviewed Part 23 probably 20 years ago. Discovered what was broken with it. We went into a normal aviation rulemaking activity thinking that we would just put a Band-Aid on what's broke and, get it fixed up.
Right.
Didn't happen that way. The more we got into it, and times have changed so much that we've gone to where we've gone back to its roots. We've gone back to Part 23 being a safety standard, and all of the guidance, the activity, the method of compliance is being kind of distributed out into industry. Industry can do things faster, quicker, more efficient than the bureaucracy. And going back to a law that was written in 1995 that basically said the government should get out of the standards business wherever possible, leveraging that, we're really seeing a lot of the advisory circulars and guidance and policies being considered anyway to go out into industry and the consensus standard system.
So when you talk about that Part 23 rewrite, what does that mean for your average member who's out there on a bench building a piece of equipment?
Well, initially not much. Where you're going to see the difference is really in the design and certification of the next generation aircraft, okay? If you do something simple, rulemaking by design takes 5 years, okay? It's designed to be a slow process. It's designed to be thorough, cost-effective, protective of the public. So it's very slow. There's many cases where rules have taken 12 years, 14 years. I know some rules taken 20 years, but in general, about 5 years. You've got an iPad in front of you.
Exactly.
Okay? It has been less than 5 years since the iPad was introduced commercially. And we're on generation 5.
Right.
Okay? Well, when you look at the advancements in technology from AEA and this show here, we can't afford 5 years to develop a TSO or a new regulation to allow something. And so what happens is when we introduce new technology, we do a lot of special conditions because the old analog regulations don't deal with modernization. This will eliminate a lot of that. It'll put a lot of this on fast track. We'll be able to develop standards much quicker, much easier, much more efficiently. So we're not going to see it directly, but we'll see it in the long term. And aviation will be able to keep up with technology in a much more efficient manner. If we continue doing what we're doing now, we're not going to see the change. And we really need to see the change. We need to enhance survivability of aircraft.
How does that filter through to the 2020 mandate for the ADS-B in and out requirement?
Probably won't affect ADS-B 2020, okay? But what you do see is, as you showed yesterday with the new product introductions, we have a couple of new angle of attack indicators that were introduced,
right.
Okay? Those angle of attack indicators were designed to a consensus standard, okay? It took 12 months from the start of the working group to the development of the standard to put that in the public domain. Now, it took the FAA another year to develop the policy, but that's okay. But nonetheless, the new product you're seeing, the safety enhancing, non-required equipment, those products can be developed under consensus standards and brought to market 3, 4, 5 years sooner than if we went through the normal bureaucracy.
On the angle of attack, and this is something that has occurred to me, why has it taken so long for that to become something that is now finally going to become common in general aviation? It's such a critical piece of information for the pilot. Why has it taken the industry so long to bring that to GA?
I'm not sure that it did. A stall switch is an angle of attack indicator. Okay? It's just that it was a switch that indicated critical angle. Okay?
It was 1 or 0, it was on or off.
1 or 0. What this does is it gives you the progress towards the critical angle. And I think it's that information. The biggest reason is that we were able to, using commercial off-the-shelf equipment, bring it into almost a commercial part and bring that into the marketplace. The difference between the AOA indicator as developed under the ASTM standard and an AOA indicator under the traditional TSO standards, which is what you see in the transport category airplanes and the more critical aircraft. The difference in those systems is almost 5-fold. Okay? So we were able to not only miniaturize it, digitize it, but we were able to reduce the cost. So we're realistically, the angle of attack indicators that you showed yesterday are 20% what they would cost for a larger certified airplane.
There's also a lot of talk in Washington, and there have been a couple of bills introduced. There's a bill in the House and a bill in the Senate to basically do away with the third-class medical, to bring some of those, to make it easier for someone to get involved in aviation. How does that translate, and what ripple effect does that have for the people who are members of AEA who are taking care of developing all these products to go into airplanes?
Well, I think that what you see is that we rely on a strong general aviation community. When you look at things like the bureaucracy of the third-class medical, it deters people from recreationally using aviation. If you use it for business, if you use it for commercial travel, which it's a great tool for, you're willing to put up with that extra effort. When it's a recreational item, that bureaucracy deters people from being involved. And the reality is that the one segment of the industry that is challenged the most is the recreational side. And we've got to get those people back. Light sport aircraft has been a growing industry. The experimental, amateur-built experimental aircraft is a growing industry. But there's no reason we can't leverage the lessons learned there into the recreational side of Part 23 as well. And that feeds right back to that Part 23 arc and the rulemaking going on. It's let's take the lessons learned and advance those. Let's not compromise the King Airs and the TBMs and the Pilatuses. We understand that. But when you're talking about the recreational aircraft, why can't we take the lessons learned out of a two-place amateur-built experimental airplane and apply it to a four-place recreational airplane? It's the same intent. Often the same power plant, same type of flight operations.
And the air moves the same way over the wing.
And the air moves the same way, and the risk to the public's the exact same. So the bills that are in Congress are absolutely needed because we need to be able to give the FAA the tools so they can focus their limited resources on where the greater risk is.
Let's come back quickly to the Part 23 and certification to an ASTM standard as opposed to a TSO. How does that affect the cost of what it is your members are producing for for the general aviation industry.
Very similar to the bureaucracy of the third class medical. The product is produced to the same quality standards without the administrative burden. Okay? If you look at a TSO, many TSOs cite a third-party consensus standard as a base for it. Either a SAE standard or an RTCA standard, and then the TSO, the rulemaking is made, cites that standard, maybe adds a little bit to it, but then creates a huge administrative burden within Part 21. That's fine for critical, essential equipment. But when we're talking about safety enhancing supplemental equipment, stuff we're trying to encourage people to install, you know, we don't need that level of administrative oversight. And that's where the real savings comes in. Still produced to a good standard, but much more in line with the consumer products. We all arrived here in Nashville. We all expected our cell phones to work, and I would argue they did.
For the most part, yeah.
You know, why can't we use that same methodology to enhance the cockpit? Not essential equipment, but the enhancements.
What do you see down the road, Rick? What kind of things are bubbling that the general public doesn't know about yet?
I think that you're going to see a lot more focus on survivability. Okay.
And how do you define survivability?
Is there a new car made today that doesn't have anti-skid?
No, not to my knowledge.
Is there a general aviation airplane that's made with it?
Not a one that I know of.
Okay. Can you buy a car without airbags?
Not that I know of. Not a new one.
Why don't we have airbags? Can you buy a car without padded dash and padded window posts? I think you're going to see, specifically with general aviation, a much more parallel into what's required with the automotive industry, so we can get some of that crashworthiness technology into the airplane. The automotive industry hasn't reduced crashes. They just reduced injuries. And I think that's where you're going to see general aviation.
Do you see that coming as a mandate out of Washington, that they will require GA manufacturers to make those in the airplanes?
No, I don't see the mandate. I see the availability of the technology and the public demanding it, okay? When you look at things like the backup camera that you see in all, I think the number 75% of the high-end vehicles today all have backup cameras. The government didn't mandate it, the public did. I think when the technology becomes available and cost-effective, the public will demand it.
You'd say that about airframe parachutes as well?
Except that there's a balance there. And part of the balance is that you're trading off useful load.
Right.
Okay. The things we're talking about, I think that you're going to see more and more of the parachutes, don't get me wrong, I think that is. But in the retrofit world, it's pretty challenging. But it's things like the 406 ELT, okay? There's a regulatory mandate for an ELT. I got that, and that's good. But when you start looking at the survivability of families, the survivability of business partners, the survivability of the breadwinners, the families, the business partners, the corporations demand the survivability technologies, not the government. We cannot require the government to require everything. We have to be good stewards of this industry if we want it to continue.
And on that note, I'm going to let you get back to work, Rick. I thank you very much. We're going to call up your colleague, Mike Anderson, to talk a little bit about the education programs and such as well. But thank you very much for taking some time to talk with us on Aero-TV.
Absolutely, appreciate it.
Aero-TV's coverage of the 57th Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show, live from Nashville, Tennessee, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors. Aspen Avionics offers the most flexible and affordable certified synthetic vision system. Try it now, absolutely free, during your first 10 hours of flight when you purchase an Aspen Avionics EFD 1000 Pro primary flight display. Customizable display layouts enhance the data you need when you need it. Once you try Aspen's Evolution Synthetic Vision, we think you'll never look at your PFD the same way again. AML's patent-pending wireless induction charging system eliminates confusion over those charging cables, cuts down cockpit cable clutter, and allows you and your passengers to fly cordless and eliminate the cable nightmare. www.aviationmodificationleaders.com